Welcome to the video. I'm Sever, and today we'll take an in-depth look at the shelter mechanic in Conan Exiles. Shelter is a character status effect that is most notably useful for avoiding damage from the sandstorm in the early game, before the player acquires a sandstorm mask to protect against it on the go. In addition to that, it can also provide a mild protection against extreme temperatures. However, that part is subject to additional requirements we will cover later in the video. So let's get into it. Here I have the pinnacle of majestic engineering, the ever-reliable sandstone cube base. We will use this to demonstrate how shelter works. Experienced players will probably recognize the following situation. You're inside your base, moving around, however you are struggling to get a consistent full shelter effect. So you end up wondering whether the system is just broken and write it off as one of the many bugs in the game. The reality of it though is that all of this is explained once you take a peek behind the curtain. You might have noticed the shelter and temperature information in the middle of my screen. This is part of a small tool I made a while back for the wiki authors, and another cool thing it can do is that it lets us visualize shelter detection around the character. As you can see, the system works by looking for objects in 5 different directions originating from the character's head. These are the 4 cardinal directions, so north, south, east and west. And yes, these are absolute directions aligned to the map and not the player, as well as vertically towards the sky. For each of these detection lines that reach a solid object, the player gains 20% shelter. But only if at least 3 of these lines make contact with something, otherwise they get no shelter at all. Most surfaces count towards this, whether they are player-placed object or part of the landscape. Except for doors, because Funcom hates doors apparently. In addition, if the vertical line doesn't make contact with anything, the player receives a minus 40% shelter penalty, so try not to be exposed from above. It's important to know that these detection lines only extend up to 20 meters from the character, which is roughly 8 foundations long in-game. If your base has sections with larger open spaces than that, consider adding some tall placeables or inner walls, otherwise you will be exposed. You need at least 80% shelter to be protected from a sandstorm. Also, when you have full shelter and at least one trace direction finds a building piece, the game also applies a slight sound effect modifier that lowers the volume of external sounds. As I mentioned at the start of the video, shelter can also offer some temperature protection, however there's a catch. The player receives 5 points of resistance against both cold and heat for each detection line that touches a building piece, scaled by the percentage of the shelter up to a maximum of 25 points. So if you're at less than 100% shelter, you would get a reduced amount per building piece hit. The catch here is that this only applies when the detection lines touch actual building pieces. Even so much as a wall tapestry or any other object between you and the walls will negate the effect. This can be useful to know when building small shelters in the frozen north. Slacking on decoration can actually save your life. The main takeaway here is that while this system might not be the most intuitive at first, knowing how it works can potentially help you utilize some clever building techniques to have proper shelter. Anyway, this concludes the video. Thanks for watching.